I wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor, which is Commonwealth Bank and Trust. This is the second year that they've sponsored the InKY reading series, and we're so appreciative. And I also want to thank board member Brittany Thurman for her tireless efforts to get us on Facebook Live, which just didn't work out this time, but hopefully we can make it work next time. Okay. I'll have various announcements throughout the event, but I think since we got a little bit late start, let's go ahead and get started and introduce some readers. Let's see. Okay, so my name's Amy Miller. I'm the Executive Director of Louisville Literary Arts, and I'm so pleased to welcome our first reader, Kristi Maxwell. Kristi is the author of 7 books of poems, including My Saturnalia Books 2020 and Realm 64, an editor's choice for the Sawtooth Poetry Prize, Hush Sessions, editor's choice for the Saturnalia Books Poetry Prize, and finalist for the National Poetry Series. She's an assistant professor of English at the University of Louisville. Welcome, Kristi.
I remembered to unmute myself. Step 1, achieved. I'm going to start off reading some poems from a new-ish series that I've been working on called Scroll or So of Our Century. It's really kind of an activity trying to make sense of the amount of time so many of us spend on our feed and the ramifications of even the language of feed used for those kind of social media platforms. It's an ekphrastic writing exercise that's looking particularly at tracking different kind of Instagram posts. So just so you'll have a background for the context of the series. I'm just going to read kind of at random from this, what's now kind of quite a lengthy 60+ page series. To eat Elvis, draw Elvis on a cookie, then bite. To eat eyeless men, a cartoonish submarine into which no one may fit. The image is all that needs changing. Slathered in street light, your painted cheek is pretty as snow. The outline you give your eye, as if it were to draft itself, an essay on seeing, the man-made lens, the whole human, in fact, man-made, inside the bright lab of another body. Unfollow the turtle onto whom has been soldered wheels. There is a carrot yet to be peeled, a carrot yet to rot, despite a name's smuggling. A speed bump inside oneself. Get over it. To specify goldenrod or canary. To unnarrate a story, turning I into a slit, other words will sew up. Healing was bound to come. Its little possum nose sowing night into the field, the moon disrobed, just earlier, while I sat looking for the poem. I've kind of like been in a season of loss that predates the kind of pandemic that's happening. A good friend of mine committed suicide in September of 2019, around the same time this project started. And then a dear neighbor was murdered on January 5th. So all of this was kind of like leading up to the pandemic for me. And I think you'll kind of sense some of that in the pieces from this series that I'm reading. And this one in particular is for my friend Jenny Pickle. And if the body is nothing more than bone's echo, holler bone. But we know an echo is not an answer, even if an affirmation. How might you interpret a desire to attend to each other like drones, to attend to each other without context, without war or landscape? Could it be done? The body is, yes, on the verge of yesterday, a rosebush revived. In the aerial view of the wave pool, humans are sprinkles lodged in the icing the water becomes in its breaking. Broken water, broken thirst. That slake contains a body of water from which we would be advised not to drink. That a body can soothe in only certain ways. Among the places one would not like to be, even there one would like to be, to not be loosened from her verb. Unless liking being is hard for her, is hard for him, is hard for them. A collection of crude embroideries alongside a masterful dinosaur. Enough with extinctions. And now I'm going to move to my new book and read a few pieces from it, My. I'm going to try to read some things I don't typically read. I didn't know who all would be here, so I didn't want to read things that a lot of people in town have heard me read before. So I'm going to try out some new things I don't typically do. I'm going to start with a poem called Mangrove or Bramble. Rambling manhole, the whole mouth working, the lip a collar signifying the worth of its work. I update my profile, relaunch the ship of my head, and head out. Lamb or wool of moonlight loom over us who lack an edge. We do not judge the coastline's monstrous face, but neither do we take the earth in our hands, ask it, turn toward us. We growths that eventually fatten, cease to show. We dogs that don't place, despite being barkless as a whittled branch. Whittle bitty, little birdie, whose throat has been grafted with an experiment we name song, but know is a peony, donning its burial gown like a good melancholic, recoding the nature of a bloom. Oh, slender casket, slid into the mausoleum of a vase. Oh, petal, oh, peeve, flashlight or flashlight, flushlight, fish dark or to dart, because your body resembles the game's implement. We ourselves game, ready or hunted for jerky or jerking off, jerking around. Shrug it off, sure, like a shore eating up the placenta of foam. What are we meant to see as a child? The dream contorts into a drain, not even a leg here and a leg there and a leg there, and yet we know what we're meant to see. So see, so see. There is more than one type of yes. From a mouth in which prayer and error rhyme. What field aspires to be a lawn? A cow, a barrette in a field, holding up an overgrown hill. A canoe, a lake's barrette, but the water is burn slick, hairless, so the comparison will not do. No updo. no occasion. A pewter hair is drilled to the wall, the head of a hair. One imagines its body behind the wall, as if there were a kink in materialization, the coordinates just off, a jacket off, a jacket rewriting the hair, a jack-rabbit. When I try to imagine myself a rabid dog, I am nothing more than a patio of a bar in a college town on foam night, whose suds easily brush off or dissolve, a novelty, a set of flimsy dentures making slack the morning's jowls, which is to say, whose desire is not a clumsy eater. The very concept of the crumb keeps any of us from truly finishing what we started. Here we are then, undone, da da dum. Somewhere, the mechanism holding closed the wall, holding back the boulder, is tripped. This is the part where we run. And this is the opening poem from My. It is funny, like all those like those like wall, like the jacket coat hangers that are just like the head really creep me out thinking about where the rest of the animal body is. It's like they're just, it's a strange concept to me. I guess they're supposed to look mounted, not alive. Sea songs. On a day in which a sunrise embarrasses you because of the way a cloud is handling the sun, an intimacy you yourself have missed, a light touch, a wisp or whiff of hand, you take a photograph, putting distance between yourself and the scene. A wave breaks some news to the shore. It is nothing new, but still, a shell under a layer of sand, a swollen lymph node. When you were small, you thought everything you saw was what you were going to see every time you looked. There are so many things to miss. A list goes here, but people around you are going on about bacon and pork rind and the ear of a pig, frozen blubber, the smoke points of various oils. You have commercial excess to thank for the dry swimsuit, your second, that you will soon put on, a permissible exit. Let go of your list, like a grudge you punish yourself with, thinking you are punishing another person. The seagrass looks like a great party from here, a crowd with arms, doing what arms do when unconsciously mimicking seagrass caught up with wind. The tide of each eyelid covers the shore of each eye. There will soon be a man-o'-war, showy as a fascinator, but with no head to hitch to, or a great head, a remarkable head, but one cannot imagine, so does not get to see. I'm going to move to two more pieces from Scroll or So of Our Century, and then a short piece from the book, and that'll be all from me. I got the deep pleasure of seeing a baby turtle, well, a lot of baby turtles hatch this summer. My mom's from St. Augustine, Florida, so I've spent every summer of my life in St. Augustine, and I've seen large sea turtles before, rarely, but some, and I've always seen sea turtle nests. But this summer, walking home with my husband on our last night before we headed home, we just happened upon 15 baby turtles making their way from their hole where they had hatched to the sea. And it was a really profound experience for me. And this poem kind of emerges from that. A new turtle paddles through the moon, a fool's moon, like every other, stamped on sea lacquered sand. You go on, repositioning the gaze as a site of transformative justice. Your street's been dead this year. A neighbor widowed 2 months after his wedding, a mother clamoring off her porch with Narcan. It's fine that you need to hover over the newly unhatched like a moon, to cheer it on, a metonym for your questionable hope, controlled by the great blah blah. It's possible you're a subtitle with an error based on mishearing or on failing to comprehend. It's possible you've been turned off altogether. I used to live in Knoxville, Tennessee, where we had a bike ride that happened every 4th of July called Freedom Thighs, kind of a raucous bike ride with costumes and a little bit of defiance mixed in, a slow ride through town. And I always wanted to make a flag that I'm going to describe to you in this poem as part of my costume. So this is based on the costume I wish I'd made in a time I used to live in. I want to bring out the red scissors and cut 2-piece scissors out of red construction paper and add paper fasteners so the paper scissors can be made to perform the action of cutting. I want to steal pubic hair from each of my friends, to adhere to a canvas, to compose a merkin flag, to raise on Independence Day as a reminder our country is made from exploited bodies. Yes, I will have exploited my friends. I will be culpable. I will be responsible. I will be irresponsible. I misremember. I know misremember is a redundancy, as memory's genre is fiction, is creative nonfiction, which is a way of lodging saying an experience, fort experience, camp experience. Come, little campers, come. To misremember then is to remember. I watched the other day a video of a woman with long red nails painting the curl of a potato peel red and attaching it to a pencil sharpener, which she then inserted her finger into, so it looked as if she had mutilated her finger. It was such a small costume. I wonder how many would overlook it, and if that would make her sad or frustrated, ready to make pronouncements about the quality of human attention in the 21st century. I myself am still sad, as I've been for many years, that we haven't figured out a way to apply a knowledge of taxidermy to a dream. I've invented so many sounds I'm unwilling to give to anything but the dream's mounted body. I'm afraid now they will be lost. I imagine a beak, a red beak. Of course, I would go bird with my imagining. The dream always seems to hover above us, like a thought bubble or a crude drawing of a very fat or puffy sheep. And this will be the last couple of lines I share with you. This is from the second part of the sequence, Sea Songs, from my new book, which I'll put the link to if anyone wants to get it. Carmichael's has some too. It is our approach that needs redoing, the test batch of our perception thrown out, the eye an icing on the dry cake of the mind. When you can't sleep, at least there's a sunrise to trail like a celebrity. A tide scrolls up like a newsfeed, and you still hover over each shell, deciding if you like it enough to note your liking, if you like it enough to take. It might prefer you not like it, might prefer not to leave. A wave debriefs the shore about the larger sea. What has it to say? There's a way to be tenderer, but we've given tenderness away to the language of meat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristi. That was beautiful, profound. And the sea turtle experience, strangely, I had a similar one in seeing the sea turtles lay eggs in St. Augustine. I have a friend who's a biologist who took us at 11 o'clock at night. So it's such a cool experience. I am going to, in addition to Kristi's new book at Carmichael's, I'm also going to put in the chat a link to Carmichael's for my. So hopefully you can see that, and you should buy it. Okay, next up, we have Adam Day. Adam is the author of Left-Handed Wolf from LSU Press and of Model of the City in Civil War from Saraband Books. He's the recipient of a Poetry Society of America Chapbook Fellowship for Badger Apocrypha and of a Penn Award. He's the editor of the forthcoming anthology Divine Orphans of the Poetic Project from 1913 Press, and he is the publisher of the cultural magazine Action Spectacle. Please welcome Adam Day.
Thanks a lot. And thanks for all the other readers for being here and our audience. This is only my second Zoom reading, so yeah. This is from Left-Handed Wolf. Guanyin. It rained, so neighbor walked barefoot through bright work of parked and rolling cars sewn inside his coat. Best place to hide something is in the present. No one looks there. How am I doing? I ask only because at least a couple of you are frozen. Robert, are you good? Yeah? Okay, it sounds okay. Okay, cool. I'll keep going then. Chakia. Sorry, actually, let me flip that over. Patini. The tree is smarter. It has stopped moving. I guess it's probably worth saying that these poems are pretty heavily influenced by my meditation practice and by the lineage of Buddhist and East Asian poetry throughout, I guess, the centuries, all the way through the contemporary moment. Godo. This was not the world. I was told that these are human beings. They did not look like human beings. Fudoin. Stars break chairs and the plants smell red in the night. I didn't write short poems for a really long time, certainly not as short as some of these. I would read people like Bill Knott or William Carlos Williams and wonder how they got so much into a poem with so few words. I don't know that I managed that, but I was sort of led organically to writing these poems. And the challenge was interesting, and it's something when I teach, I ask my students to do as well. Also, sometimes the short poem can kind of feel insufficient as a reader. Paramita. Hard the black bear has to work to speak, accosting the boulder for its lack of ambition, its absence of anger, its need for touch. Samadhi. Day is late and has no horse. Icicles on concertina wire, Blue Ridges blackening, buoy bells and fog, groaning pylons, boat hidden in Cape reeds. A body neatly disposed of floating to the surface. Plank in reason doesn't fuck with what comes up. Dickinson, obviously, another one of those poets who just absolutely crushes it with short poems. Kapala. The little girls from down the road don't take shit. Hate witnesses. They're up the red oaks, cigarette filters crushed in ironweed, bone and amaranth clouds piss into the river horizon. Screen door smacks in wind, yard of broken bricks, and 2 dead moles blue in the dusk. Walking out finally across the damp grass, drunk toward the river. Another one of the challenges, I guess, I mean, the way I write, I rarely sort of have a concept and follow it. I write poems, and then there appears to be linkages, and it's like being in the mood for a certain kind of food, and then you eat Chinese for like the next 5 months. And so, but once I realized I had a collection, one of the sort of things that felt like a challenge in a sense was to write about or from, to a certain extent, a spiritual place, but that would still engage the general reader, because I think often that kind of writing can potentially exclude the reader if they don't feel a connection. And so that was an interesting challenge, and there were certain moments that I cut from poems that were just too invested in the jargon or the ideas of Buddhism. Naguma. Undrowned but often almost drowning, she's chosen the baby to include as herself, leaves behind the bearer of axle grease, knuckles, motor pants like a forest of bandaged-eyed owls. Strange how differently joy operates these days. Still, she doesn't know what's beyond that stand of trees or what's keeping it. Hard to convey the space she is when she steps finally off the subway. Whipped air at the swaddled's head. There are several thousand ways to kill a man. Whenever I hear a story, whether in real life or, in film or books or whatever, of a man leaving, for good in the night, it always seems cowardly. And whenever I hear a story of a woman doing it, it just sounds badass. I don't know why that is, but it always seems so earned. InKY. Bird shit bleached house has gone back to snow. Mockingbird up on a line, fucking with the noise ordinance. Amida. Bathing now, eyes drawn to the wide wrinkled two-potato sack of balls at his crotch. Like soldiers on tour, staring at strange ground. This is the last poem in the book. I joke that I really pulled one over on LSU because they paid for a book that's made up 75% of white space. Hanami, blue mountain makes white clouds. The trees are pulling up anchor. I'm going to read some newer poems in a sort of different vein. They were spurred by the contemporary historical sort of socio-political moment, part of which is being a resident of this city at this particular time. So I'll read some of those poems now. Object landscape. Most of the poems don't have titles, by the way, but this one does. Object landscape. The wind does not talk among the stones or precinct shells. Stone rolled in the mouth, whirled as will. There's nothing hiding in the branches. Cherry blossoms are here and gone. Another poem. Wind turning over secrets to the authorities under the black cypress. Best to remain indoors, avoid the errorists. Now, how to translate this for tomorrow's Good Morning show. Conscious or unconscious libidinal thought, latent beneath manifest order to stop and frisk, or individuals are gently crushed by the force of labyrinthine environment. Still, moonlight fucks the cell's window bars, priapic hunger, and the secession of day and night. The need is large, the field is large. It really, the oddest thing about reading on Zoom is the utter and complete silence. I think everyone should have like animals and children and shit running back and forth behind them. Actually, instead of us all being on mute. Here's another one. He died in a holding cell for smoking loud at the park. Thirsty heat inside himself like a nomad shearing sheep. At home, the cat drank from the bath, one paw balanced on his someone's knee. There's nothing hiding outside in the branches. Some of the poems have repeat lines that, in theory, if the poems become a collection, we'll link them at different points in the book. Water bottles, haywire dance, rubber bullet song, hip on hip, territory arrangement, nurse hands slipping through the dark, roped rain light and masks like a cupboard holding a lost generation. A live body can be punched in the back, so can a dead one. I don't know how I'm doing on time. I'm just going to read a few more. Every single time I think I've ever read in my life, I've told myself I'm going to start a timer, and I never do. Never once have I done that. Flaming shingles fly above streets outside neighbor's apartment, playing NBA 2K21, blasting DJ Screw, wretched of the earth on the end table, white fist raised, curtain closed, young folk walking Raleigh, the expanse of reality. My relatability makes me sympathetic, no? Poverty, family crime, scraping pig renderings from chemical tanks. Allies woke as Whole Foods, tattoos and Vespas, downward facing dog, and picking their own fruit. Still no essence and phenomenon, no permanent self, just losing the strange things we never understood and slipping into the stream. So this will be my last poem. It's called Crooked Fever. In Louisville, hemp rope is tied around Major General Breckinridge's neck. The separation from Plinth gesturing at identity formation, and Louis XVI marble hand is broken off. Though in the late 1700s France, the commune is who took his head. Performance as protest. Fairy tales are real, but they have corpses and men pushing empty strollers. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Adam. I have just put a link to Carmichael's bookstore for Adam's book, Left-Handed Wolf. So do check that out. I hope you do end up with a new book with these meditation poems. Let's see, I have a few announcements that I want to make. LLA offers classes now. If you didn't know that, we'd love to have you. We have a few coming up next week, November 17th with Tatiana Wells. She'll be teaching a class on memoir called Reflections and Mirrors, Writing and Publishing Your Memoir. On November 19th, Kristi Maxwell, who just read for us and is waving in the corner, is teaching a class on poetry called To the Letter, examining the smallest details of poems. So I will put these links into the chat, but you can also visit our website to get the links to these. And then we have a few in December that are going to be really great. Right now, I only have a link to one. It's for Nancy McCabe's Writing and Healing class. I think that's going to be a great one based on the work of Louise DeSalvo. So let me go ahead and put that in the chat. And hopefully you can check those out. And then just two more things, and I'll give the floor to Ellie. On November 30th, we are going to celebrate the writers who took Lipstick University with Rihanna Nicole. These are writers in Louisville who learn how to slam. And we're having a poetry reading with them. I know that Rihanna will be there. I think she's hosting. Robin G has agreed to come on and share her work, and we're working on a few more secret guests. So do check that out. It's only a $5 donation to keep the series going. And then between December 10th and December 12th, LLA is having its very first fundraising event and its very first pandemic fundraising event. And I see Eric beaming over there. He has been instrumental in making this happen, as has Irv Klein, who is on the call as well. And the fun starts with the next InKY reading series with Nancy McCabe, Benjamin Garcia, and Michael Bowman. And then we're going to have a conversation with Sam Miller at Carmichael's to talk holiday gift giving for your book loving friends on the 11th. And on the 12th, Michael Bowman has a poetry class he's teaching, and we will have a holiday reading with the Naked Poets, Ron Whitehead, Rihanna Nicole, and many more. So I hope you will join us. We will also be having a silent auction all 3 days. We have some amazing items. I just saw a huge bourbon set come in today. I'm hoping that we can get up and running. Hopefully we won't have any issues with that, but it looks beautiful. And we'll be posting more information very soon on our website, so stay tuned. So without further ado, let me welcome our last reader for the evening. Ellie Swensson is a queer Southerner currently writing poems in Denver, Colorado. She earned her MFA from Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics at Naropa University in 2015. She is the founder and co-director of Writers Warehouse, a mutual care collective for the writers community. A profile of the Writers Warehouse is forthcoming in the next issue of the Community Literacy Journal. Swensson is an active community builder and collaborator with over 7 years of program experience, including the reading series Bouldering Poets and Crew House, collaborations with the City of Boulder's Office and Art and Culture, Boulder Public Library, Denver Small Press Fest, Jaipur Literary Festival, Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art, Boulder Creative Collective, and more. Swensson is a firm believer that poetics is what occurs where eros, divinity, activism, and careful craft intersect. Her poems are published in a handful of places you may know, but she prefers her words alive in the mouth and the body. Her debut collection of poems, Salt of Us, was published in 2019. Let's all welcome Ellie Swensson.
Thank you so much. Oh, that's so wild. The silent applause is just something bizarre to get used to. All right, so generally when I do readings, I kind of use my whole body. So I'm going to stand up and do a brief sound check. If you all are good with that, I guess just give me thumbs up and then I'll keep trucking. So let's see. If I'm back here reading at this volume, how does it work? Perfect. Thumbs up all around. All right, y'all, here we go. I'm going to start off with some poems from my book, Salt of Us, which Amy just mentioned. If you're interested in this book, I'm currently running the sales myself, so we'll throw in a link of how you can contact me if you're interested in procuring this. So first piece is called Open. Stevie gave their blood to the stream below, dropped the ink of their flesh to the water, and watched the earth open to receive it. Wombs, riverbeds, Deprima's body, this flesh, she says, all I have to offer. What we give each other is unbounded. What we give each other is a mortal thing. That dead, that doe dead and wide-eyed, the tide lapping at her swollen belly, the hooves, the ears, and the silent nose. Still tongue, still frightened by headlights, what we give each other is risky shelter. If I open my hand to you like this, palm up and out, do you see a request or an offering? And I actually wasn't planning to read that poem. And then Kristi, I heard you speak about your experience with the sea turtles on the beach. And so I was just immediately sent to that experience when I was walking on a beach in Florida, and there was a doe just in the shallows as if she had been scared off of the road. And so thank you for kind of evoking that experience of my own with my toes in the sand. So next piece is called Searching for Soil. Seeking spoons like my grandmother mid-morning. It was dark then and I was too young to know this is how one loses mind, how one looses in time's throw. You and I roll together and winter is keeping its eye drawn just outside the window. Something thin like your new curtains, something born like the mass held at the shower drain. I'm feeling more drawn to tales of viscera and the bowl of the moon. There are horns wrapping the board and death draping the thresh. There are Sela's block essays and the afterbirth circling the rim. It's a different kind of halo these days, favoring flesh to light, searching for soil to hoof across. the good and the disciplined and the skillful, the seed and the crescent and the tooth curved out. We sat on the frozen dock for hours and shivered our boundaries clean. I watched the flame burn for yesterdays. Cody saw white in the gray wax wavering, and I thought of tapping into the vein. What names to claim and frame silence, my sister's voice laughing past sorrow, my lover's voice holding my hips, my mother's voice rattling the box. My grandmother called in again. Me balancing the hostess and the blade, a toppling temperance, chalice ripe and dripping from hand to hand. It's another tree branch skinning the joint. What I crave in friction, a reminder to bleed and let flow, flexed for keeping. We need more breath for the flame. B says, breathe slow like a lover. The necessity of seduction in this crowded home of open hands. You have to be selective with what to give. The truth of the matter is that I ain't tending my keep. A detailed neglect of strategy. Place the lighter on the mantle. Keep your eyes on the hearth. Finish what you've started here. Finish what you've started in the belly of the beast. Remember what it is to move between the lines. A prayerful watch of the gray. A prayer for the paths that bore me and the paths I blaze, you know, like how wounds echo, singing their blatant disregard for generational gap. My grandmother kept herself small, and I flex against my skin to remind me that I am always and never her kind. I am always and never bucking the feminine wild, a desire to bind up the disparate fancy-free. Ancestral drawn, me swinging ghost swagged and hooded, a thorned queen of pentacles, spread, spent, straddling the throne. This one is called Florida Moon. I'm thinking of Denise Duhamel again and how she wrapped the moon up in the details of her daily life. And now it's inseparable in my mind. Every time I see the moon, I hear Denise's words. Ego and superego taught me how every noun is holy and dug out the depth of naming. Naming is that failed love affair we can't quite let out the back door, a net with the bottom snipped out. The syllables are wrong, so we reach again, our mouths wrong around it, tongue tripping out. The sounds hit harsh against the resentful edge of the object we long to hold. But tonight, she is moon. I know it, she is and will be moon hung out of reach, if even underfoot. Because moon is not that silver sky. No, moon is not the lantern heartstrung. No, moon is first kiss, forgotten face and taste linger. Moon is cloud smear tear of echo torn across, and the house in the rear view. That shrinking shroud sound of passage. Moon is mother, and a white robe and a tree belly up after the storm. A temporary scar. The ghost reflected off the glass sea of jade or wax or obsidian thrown. Moon is linger. Moon is cut thread and tossed tether. Moon is will be returning, chaotic grace. Is eyes wide drunk on divination. Is a cosmic finger wag and I told you so that just won't quit. So nameless and full, I go out to greet her. Find her tucked beneath the veil again, her halo a bend oil slick of nightfall, and I'm offering dreams up I haven't yet seen. All right, so I'll end with the book for now and transition into some new work. Again, Kristi, actually during your reading, I just felt so in conversation with your work, specifically when you mentioned the grief and loss you were carrying into quarantine times. I also lost a friend of mine in November of last year, and I feel like the past many months have been a pendulum swing between grief and rage. and trying to find some sort of balance or how to be a vessel for those extremes. And these pieces are kind of my journey through that. So this first one is called Haven, which is dedicated to Andrew, who is my friend who passed away. Today, Instagram warned me that my DNA might not like salad. And there you were again in the mundane absurdity of the everyday media frenzy scroll turn stanza, an irreverent blow square to the jaw. Beast mode antics and soft boy trappings. I hear your voice in every white noise intermission, the fur silhouette underpinning the scene. How do you heal a loss like this when the cornerstone slips and linear time won't even blink for us? How do you heal? Legacy was never your game. You were so alive, Eric said, the most alive, Eric said, and Zofia and I agree that you'll never stop being everywhere. So I'm setting an altar for you, and I'm setting a date for whiskey and screaming into the Colfax void and the garage door and the alley and the yard and the page, and our own mouths, and I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention because the details are in the devil, and how else can you burn this thing down if not with strategic blasphemies? And how do you heal? How do you show up so hard, so prolific with a resilient rejection of tyrannical shoulds? How do you maintain this insatiable joy for bucking the system and your own ego? Legacy was never your game. The fact that I didn't even know I learned how to walk from you is a testament to your pedagogy. 3 days later, you were selling jewelry from a cart parked on my dream's curb, and I cried slow when I saw you walk up. Are you going to make gold of my tears? I asked, and you laughed at me because, of course, the nerve of my sentimentality, putting money so close to my tenderness like that. The irreverent blow you offer in the back street of every room where poets show themselves. The reminder, grief like us is a trick beauty, is a sleeping rage just below the surface. Grief like us is a haven, and I am profoundly unsure how to leave. All right. So talking about that pendulum swing from grief into rage, this is a piece that I wrote on January 4th of this year in response to Trump as a phenomenon in our world. And so there's a great deal of anger in this piece, and it feels important to lay down that grief to rage swing. So this is just called January 4th, 2020. I have to reopen that Trump poem. Mike is scared that it won't end. How do I console that? Because they aren't wrong. How do I hold the sorrow rage of knowing there are still thousands that will be sacrificed on the altar of that man's hubris? I have to reopen and acquaint myself with anger. You like your warriors how you like your women, silent, belly up, left for dead. The metaphor of a black hole loses absurdity on the daily. I fear monsters I can't understand. How do we sleep them? How do we return them to the earth, the world they are birthed of? How do we rebury our demons on the sunniest of days, fists to the sky? How do we grit through so much death and so much apathy? What if the monsters of the void don't have the clear sense of righteousness we always believed? We make sense of monsters through their suffering, but if the suffering is a lie, then their insatiability cannot be outwitted. Do you understand? They cannot be won. And this is a fight to the death. And there is a need for moral clarity. That nameless rage I locked down as a teenager is lying in wait. And how do I weaponize it? How do I weaponize a body that learned its worth is in kneeling? I am large, I contain multitudes, name the lie, remember the faces. There's a reason your lungs are this expansive. There's a reason you know how to flex into a fight. There's a reason your spine straightens up when you smell a threat. There's a reason you are an animal. There's a reason you pace in rage and can't stay still, and why you process loss by free bleeding and black bloc. Holler the streets. How do I love hard and precise enough to bury silver bullets in fascism's chest? The scope of radical joy. How we weaponize ourselves to disarm others. How we sharpen tongue. That's a hard one to put into a silent space, y'all. I'm used to like at least hearing some breaths or something. Whew. All right. Let's see. We're gonna do these ones. These are also pieces written in quarantine. This first one isn't really a cohesive piece. It's just notes during those few months where everything was seriously in lockdown and we had no idea, still don't know what the world's gonna look like on the other side of it. To quantify a sunned belly, round and offered, is to net strictures against vitality. I long for a home, but am never defined by it. Who do you call for in the cornered room? What is the name of your hope? Voweled and bounteous and prayerful, we were taught fullness as blasphemy, but my, how we've grown, how we've bounded out, brave mouths, fruitful, we bear it, how we've loosed ourselves. The battle of maintenance, whatever boundary I cast to maintain, I see it snapped, pitted, overworked, underpaid, and cast as adversarial. Domesticity and rage, the common denominators of love and the strategic display. The cards I show, the cards I keep, the cards that keep themselves with other veils. I think about my stomach and the home there, what I carry, what feeds, alchemy of goods for good. I want to walk open-handed, a receptive body. May I be more than the woundings, the survival, and beneath that, how the world is blue if you stay still long enough. This piece is called Instructions on Grief as a Fast Friend. Death is around us. Now, how to hasten the birth, how to wait in kind. Patience as liberation is not my marker. I'm running the further field, thumb-deeped mire. I'm running the rope, drummed up the who of the other like a seed, drummed up the row, root-casted fetter. I can never be capital's fodder with my head open like this, with my heart like a cup, wearing such a glorious lack of mortal fear. Return to the run, to the heel to toe, the heel to toe the lever. I can never be capital's fodder with a broken like this, with a gilded wound. And then, Amy, how am I on time? Because I forgot to set my own timer. I apologize for that. Do we know? Is Amy there? Okay. Kristi's giving me a thumbs up.
You're fine.
Okay. All right. The evocation of a theremin chest. A pressed rib beneath thumb. I take weight as a reminder, as a call, a warm fist well placed as a gauge. Take my pulse as you will. Take me also as an affirmation that it is possible to buck wild against the muchness of fear. There are those sensations that gain potency through repetition. Ritual strength, you know, how to play anticipation with a strong hand, with eyes locked in a chokehold, saying, right here, this now, this is a truth to witness. We now are a multitude worthy.
And then I will round out with some pieces from an ongoing project called The Myth of Switch, which is just Eric shaking his head. I've been working on this forever. Who knows if it's ever going to be done? It's one of those projects that when I first started writing it, I honestly thought I was potentially losing my mind. And because of that, I can't let go of it. This piece is called Terminus. Switch and I were together in Terminus. This was the city. We grew in the periphery in the suburbs of swamps and symmetrical brick. Terminus, both sprawling and crumbled, where roots dove deep enough to unearth themselves, where paved stones covered the dead, thin veils to tread. Streets were named trees and fruits and fallen soldiers, grayback alleys, parkways, stubborn effigies of selective memory. Seasons passed as an accumulation of weight towards summer. We wore August like propriety. The air was thick, so thick you couldn't fathom the width until you pulled it through your lungs. Air so thick you wicked it from your skin. Fall was orange and slight. Winters were dualistic cold, rain or ice in the absence of snow. Spring opened windows for 2 months' time, no more, no less. The skyline also read thick. Nights laden with remnant smog affirmed the star's distance. Terminus knew its bounds and claimed itself firmly of the world. Within it, we left traces of could be, broken lamps and small fires indoors. Southbound. Tell us the story worth telling. Ancestors at the door, in the hall, in the parlor, sipping Watkins vanilla in the glass. Hover hum in the foyer, bless her, bourbon ladies whisper neat bless. My grandmother's ghost holding kitchen court with the women who bore us, spun conversation in southern tongues, platters arrived plated full and garnished well, placed parsley frilled on the doilies edge. The measure, the grace, ample food for ample hips, wide set, but clamped ankles always crossed. I remember the aunt I'm named for perched on the framed photo with poodles and the lesbian lover. What's her name? What's her name? What's her? The picture of me in diapers and lace. The picture of me with cake smeared on my face. The picture of the me's on the wall in the book tucked in the drawer. Served up on silver trays, tongued back, deep and swallowed. Medial. Switch found a trap door behind the memory of lover, the shape of it in clear silhouette right past the false start. It isn't obvious where to place your hands, Switch said, just push. Unexpected expanse of hidden passageways, another depth. How we can exceed ourselves also in grief. The pendulum swing between our passionate joy and tender witness and that pit floating where abandonment stayed overlong. Where we became unsure if it was us or another who left this place first. The hollows, the truth of the thing, the much and the wound of it, where agency and honor muddy the crossing, where we cross over marked. And there is such fear in the dark of one's own permission, that lack of knowing, that first taste of trust revived,
revisited or revised too, with the salt of my lips as remembrances. The river beneath the river in which we are always and never the same. And I think that's all that I have for y'all this evening. So thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much, Ellie. That was wonderful. I have put Ellie's email address and her Instagram handle in the chat. So if you would like to reach her out to her directly for her book Salt of Us, that's how you do it. So I know we've gone a little over 8 o'clock, but I do want to make sure we have time for questions. So if anyone has a question, you can unmute yourself, or if you'd rather put the question in the chat, I'd be happy to read it for you. But let's make sure that we start, if possible, by everybody unmuting and giving everyone a round of applause, because I think they deserve it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what questions do you have? Okay, I'll start. I always think it's interesting to see what sort of connections bubble up at readings between readers, and maybe it's the pandemic that has made our lives similar. But I'd heard a lot of connections on loss and how to deal with grief, on rage and raging at the machine that is our political universe right now, and a lot of reflections on spirituality and the natural world. And wonder if you can talk some about how each of you came to these poems, especially at this time when we are isolated and it's so hard to feel like anything that we do can help what is going on in the broader world right now. Ellie, would you like to start?
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm kind of gathering myself at the same time. Could you repeat just the last portion of your question for me?
If I can, yes. Let's see. I'm just wondering if you think it's the pandemic and how we've been so insulated, if that is what is making you more introspective about issues of grief and loss and wanting connection with the natural world, or is it independent of what is going on outside?
I think a dear friend of mine was describing this whole year as an act of lifting the veil, which I really resonated with. And so I feel that, you know, that rage and that grief has been present for a lot of us for a long time for various reasons, but the particular circumstances of being at home, of being faced with a pandemic, of seeing economic collapse, of seeing political unrest, of seeing murders by police in the streets, all of these things that are happening, it makes it impossible to excuse it as something else. There's not a room, from my perspective, there's no room for abstraction or excuses anymore. And so I've felt like I have to confront things much more head on and call a thing in a way that maybe I haven't been able to previously.
Sense. Kristi, Adam, do you have any thoughts?
Well, yeah, for my part, only one of the pieces I read tonight was written during the pandemic. So it's interesting that they felt like they might have been written during the pandemic. I think largely everything I've been writing for the past couple of years is so deeply informed by climate despair that that's already a part of maybe the general mood that's amplified by the pandemic. And it is strange how different pieces take on new layers in the face of reading them in a pandemic, but only one of those pieces was written that recently.
It's a hard question for me to answer. I feel like with the book, there was a lot of thought about what motivates us, all of us, including people we disagree deeply with. And then with the newer poems, it's more explicit. It deals, those poems are dealing a lot with the personas that we move out into the world with. The self or selves we are in different contexts and with different people. My girlfriend's brother-in-law is an Indiana state trooper, and we were at a family gathering the other day, and it was ironic to, he was in his uniform, to see him just sort of, relaxing on the couch, talking with the family, and then he had to leave for work, and then imagining him, as the state trooper, like not as the guy hanging out with his family. And so these current poems, I don't know that they have so much to do with the pandemic, or even the particular events of this this sort of historical moment. I feel like, it's I don't feel like this has been going on, these things, many things have been going on for a very long time. It's just simply that a light has been shown on them in a way that hasn't for quite a long time. Also, I think you can only think a light has been shown on them if you live outside of a certain community or communities. So I think there's just a wider awareness. I think that's there. And for me, I can't really see American issues of race, not to mention its issues with other identity formations, without thinking about, for instance, the war on terror. The world of Guantanamo or Abu Ghraib, to me, is not a stone's far throw from what we've seen from for instance, the police over the last months on the news networks. So I think, this may be a little pedantic, but I think it's important for people not to think this is a unique historical moment. I think it's a unique seeing, like the veil pulled back, yeah. But I think for a lot of us, we already knew what was happening, but there's something vital, and I mean vital like enlivening, whether it's through anger or a sense of injustice or really a sense of excitement, right? There are people who've been really motivated through anger, who might have just sat back otherwise, in previous times. any case, I think those are some of the things going on in my work, or at least in my mind. If it's made it into the work or not yet, I'm not sure. But I do know that for a very long time, I've thought that poetry in particular, and this is a broad generalization, but oh well, has too often shied away from the socio-political. And that often in turn it's handled it really poorly and lacked nuance, and had a particular view, um, that sort of preached to the choir. And this is a moment where I think writers and thinkers are given the opportunity, whether they take it or not, to think more complexly about like the nuances of all this, because it's complicated. Hearing people talk about the exit polls and who voted for women, like who women voted for, and who suburbanized voted for, and who, black men voted. It's all it does is reveal that there is no, the generalizations can only go so far. And the minute that you overlook the nuances is the moment that you start making assumptions about the way the world will look, and then become very surprised when it doesn't look that way. But that's my long answer.
I think it's a really interesting moment where there's such a longing for community at the same time that there's so much empathy being pulled out of us. So right when we are like wanting to be around people all the time, there's so much tragedy also happening. I think that's part of why grief has been so important. And I was thinking a lot about capitalism too, of, one of the veils that has been lifted this year is usually when you see resistance movements, there's some talking head on the news that says, well, all these people just need to go get a job. Or why are you engaging in this conversation? So focused on X, Y, and Z because you should just be a contributing member of society, right? And so while the tragedies that we're facing and the injustices we're facing are not unique, I feel like this is one of the first times where that isn't, like, that cannot be used as an excuse to silence folks. And it's been interesting to see how I feel like that failure of capitalism this year has directly resulted in more sustained involvement on the activist side of things, which is, I mean, to me, it just shows how clearly indicted that system is in all of these injustices we're seeing. But I just wanted to throw that out as well.
Thanks. Does anyone else have a question where we let everybody go and enjoy the rest of their evenings? No?
I just want to thank everybody again for being here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ellie and Kristi and Adam. And I realized I got the order wrong, and I'm so sorry if I threw you.
No.
Sorry about that, Adam. I just threw you right into it, didn't I?
No, I was, yeah, Ellie Ellie got the weight of going last, which was perfect because the performative aspect of your reading, Ellie, I think really topped things well.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say this is the year of learning how to be adaptable. So it was par for the course. Yep, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
For coming tonight. We have recorded this, so if anybody wanted to come and couldn't make it, I will have it up on YouTube tomorrow, and I will share the link on as many social channels as I am allowed onto. And if I'm not allowed, I'm looking at you, Eric, and I'm looking at you, Brittany, to help me get the word out. Thank you all. Have a great night. See you next
Thanks. Good night.